Most people who are underestimating themselves don't know they're doing it. That's what makes it so costly. It doesn't feel like underestimating. It feels like being realistic. It feels like humility. And the person most likely to waste their potential because of this is not someone lazy or careless. It's someone thoughtful, self-critical, and deeply aware of their own shortcomings. In other words, it might be you. And the 10 signs in this video are how you'd know for sure. Psychologists have a name for this. They call it capability blindness, the inability to accurately perceive your own capacity from the inside precisely because you're too close to it. What makes it so hard to shake is that the symptoms look almost identical to actual inadequacy. The doubt feels real. The hesitation feels warranted. The holding back feels like wisdom. But there are signs. And if several of these feel uncomfortably familiar, pay close attention. Because what you've been calling your ceiling might actually be your floor. The first sign is that you are your own harshest critic, and your standards for yourself would horrify you if you applied them to anyone else. If someone you loved made the same mistake you made last month, what would you say to them? You'd be kind, patient. You'd put it in context. But when it happens to you, the response is instant and merciless. You replay it. You treat a single moment as if it's a verdict on your entire character. Psychologists call this the self-compassion gap, and research consistently shows that the people most prone to this aren't the ones who care the least, they're the ones who care the most. The cruelty of the inner critic is proportional to the size of the standards behind it. You're not too hard on yourself because you're broken. You're too hard on yourself because something in you refuses to accept less than what you know is possible. The second sign is that you've quit things, not because you couldn't do them, but because they couldn't hold you. There's a version of quitting that looks like failure from the outside but is something else entirely on the inside. You weren't struggling. You were bored. Not the lazy kind of bored, the suffocating kind. The kind that arrives when your mind has already outpaced the challenge and there's nowhere left to go. You've told yourself a story about this, that you lack discipline, that other people finish things and you don't. But studies on sustained effort show the primary predictor of follow-through isn't willpower, it's match quality, the fit between a person's capacity and the demands placed on it. The problem was never your ability to commit. The problem was the size of what you were committing to. The third sign is that you notice things other people walk straight past. A tension in a conversation nobody else names. A flaw in a plan that seems obvious to you before it's been tried. A detail in an argument that unravels the entire thing. You've probably learned to stay quiet about this, because pointing it out too often makes you seem difficult or like you're overthinking. But what you're experiencing is a form of perceptual sensitivity that cognitive scientists associate with high fluid intelligence. Most people are filtering that information out. You aren't. What feels like a burden in casual situations becomes a significant asset the moment the environment demands real precision. The fourth sign is that you feel a restlessness that has nothing to do with your circumstances. Things can be stable, comfortable, even good, and still something underneath feels like it isn't enough. It's a specific kind of internal friction, like a current running beneath the surface of your daily life with nowhere to go. Developmental psychologists describe this as capacity pressure, what happens when a person's potential significantly exceeds the demands being placed on it. The restlessness isn't dissatisfaction with your life. It's your capability producing energy with no sufficient outlet. The fifth sign is worth pausing on, because everything so far, the self-criticism, the quitting, the noticing, the restlessness, can easily be read as a list of problems to fix. But here's what the research actually says. These are not the patterns of someone with low potential. They are the patterns of someone with high potential and insufficient context. The critic becomes precision. The quitter becomes someone who refuses to waste their life on the wrong things. The noticer becomes the person everyone eventually defers to. The restless person becomes unstoppable once they find something large enough to absorb them. The issue has never been what you have. The issue is where you've been putting it. The sixth sign is that you're the person people come to when they're actually stuck, not for simple answers, for the conversations that matter, when someone is genuinely lost and doesn't know how to think through something. You might have dismissed this, told yourself they just don't have anyone else to ask. But if you track it honestly, you'll find it's a pattern, not a coincidence. Informal influence is almost always the first place real capability surfaces, long before titles, long before formal recognition. The 7th sign is that you've been waiting to feel ready for something you're probably already ready for. There's a decision you haven't made, a direction you keep approaching and stepping back from because something inside insists you need more time, more certainty. What drives this almost universally isn't low confidence, it's high standards. People who don't care about outcomes don't hesitate. They just act. The hesitation is the mark of someone who understands the weight of what they're about to do. Readiness isn't something that arrives before you begin. It's something that develops because you did. The 8th sign is that failure hits you harder than it seems to hit other people, and you come out of it more changed. You don't shake it off quickly. You sit with it longer than feels comfortable. People sometimes call this sensitivity or taking things too personally. But research on post-failure integration shows that the depth of the response is closely linked to the quality of the learning that follows. The discomfort isn't weakness, it's the processing mechanism. The person who comes out the other side isn't just recovered, they're restructured. Harder to knock over in the same way twice. The 9th sign is that you've consistently underestimated how much you've already built. Think about something you know how to do that took you years to understand. Notice how it feels from the inside, obvious, natural, like something anyone could figure out. That's the familiarity discount. The better you understand something, the more invisible the expertise becomes. You forget what it costs to learn it, and so you don't count it, but other people can see it. What feels effortless to you is not effortless. It's internalized. The 10th sign is that you haven't yet been somewhere that asked for everything you have. Not 60%, not 70%. Everything. Most environments don't demand that. Most situations are calibrated for the average range of human capacity. And so, people operate in the average range. Not because that's their limit, but because nothing has asked for more. People almost never discover the upper boundary of their capability in comfortable conditions. They discover it when something, a crisis, a calling, a commitment they can't walk away from, finally demands that they find out what's actually in them. For most people watching this, that moment hasn't come yet. That's not a failure. That's a fact about timing. But it means the ceiling you've been living under isn't a ceiling at all. It's just the height of the room you've been standing in. Untapped potential doesn't announce itself. It shows up disguised as restlessness, as standards that feel impossibly high, as a quiet sense that something hasn't been found yet. Most people who watch this will recognize 3 or 4 signs. Some will recognize all 10. If you're honest with yourself about which ones landed, you already know what that means. And somewhere in the comments, someone is writing that number right now. Maybe that's where this starts for you.